Today's session brings together insights from experienced journalists who have a special interest in healthcare. We'll be looking at what makes a health story matter. We'll also be looking at how healthcare policy can be changed through journalism, and we'll tell you about some of our most embarrassing mistakes as young journalists starting out. First, a little bit about us. My name is Jane Worthington, Adjunct Lecturer in Health Communications at Notre Dame University, and also I teach Media Studies at UNSW. I started my career on the Australian and Daily Telegraph. I worked in hospital communications and am the CEO of DigiMed Australia. Delighted to have Natasha Robinson with us tonight, who is the National Health and Science Editor at the Australian newspaper. She's also a former investigative reporter for the ABC, and her stories have resulted in exposing systemic failures in Australia's healthcare system. We also have Mark Mulligan with us tonight, who is the World Editor at the Australian Financial Review. Mark was also the former press advisor to Craig Emerson, our former Federal Trade Minister, and you also worked for many years on the Financial Times in London. Natasha, can you tell us, when something comes across your desk or you come up with an idea, what really grabs your attention?
I do find myself that a press release straight off the bat is not always the best way to go. If you want to pitch a story, I find that a very effective way is just a very simple, punchy email with the kernel of the story. Are you interested in this? I could tell you more. And that's always preferable to me than a press release, because a press release, it may not contain the information that I as a journalist am looking for. It may be angled in a certain way that I may not be interested in that angle. You may be wasting your time if this particular publication you're approaching is not interested in that story. And a press release, and it's the same with op-eds, I would say to people, never send an op-ed without making an approach. Are you interested in my opinion? What would you like it to say?
We've also got a lot of health professionals here who are not journalists, but they have an interest in reporting news for health policy. Mark, have you got any advice in terms of using data in stories? Particular data is really important in reporting health.
Well, I think the number one data is that anyone who's trying to pitch a story, be it in the form of a press release or an email or a phone call, is they should look around at what's already been written, what's trending. Data works, obviously. It can help to catch the attention of the person that you're aiming it at.
That's right. Data always beats opinions. And as I tell my students, so if we were looking, for instance, for the sake of an exercise, Natasha, you get a press release about ER waiting times. It's 2023, say. We get ER waiting times are the lowest they've ever been since 2020. What would you do with that data?
It depends who's giving it to you. That's the first thing I'd say, and how they may have an agenda in how they want it to look. The obvious thing that is raised by comparing to 2020 is that there was the year of the first year of the COVID pandemic. So I regularly look at data on hospital trends, and I always go back to 2019 as my comparator point.
Right, because you need a good baseline. So establishing that baseline's really important, isn't it? Because journalism is about, our first obligation is to the truth, and it's about getting the real story, not just finding the numbers that give you the pretend story.
That's right. Well, look, I probably could talk about a very good example from a couple of years ago when I wrote a magazine cover piece about chronic urinary tract infections, which predominantly affect women and girls, but also can affect men. The editor of the Weekend Australian magazine was very, very interested in the story. She wanted to put it on the cover, and the entire newspaper was scratching their head saying, "You're putting UTI on the cover of the Weekend Australian magazine." I can tell you that it was one of the most successful and most heavily engaged with stories I have ever written, and it has led to real policy change and change in practice in medicine. So they were telling people doctors and GPs and even urologists would tell people that came back again and again and again with absolutely debilitating symptoms. They didn't even accept that for a long time, that bacteria could penetrate the wall of the urothelium and the bladder. So that was something that I put out there on the basis of, women and their real life experience, that they'd been gaslit for so long by doctors, but I did have the backing of the science. So it would have been difficult to write that kind of story if you didn't have the backing of science saying, yes, this is true. What these women are saying is true according to the science.
That's right. Like, you frequently find yourself questioning the status quo, don't you? Particularly with doctors who are often very opinionated. You'll have one bit of evidence that's completely the opposite to another. And I think for a lot of young health students like you guys, you're working in healthcare industries and you probably don't have much writing or pitching experience. Think about maybe something as easy as, why is it important? Why are you chasing this for you? If it was your mother or your sister with this health condition, what would you tell the journalist? It's as simple as that, as Natasha said, to get the what, where, when, who, how, why in that very first paragraph. Mark, just to you for a minute. So we were talking a little bit earlier about how business reporting often is very similar to health reporting, because we can see that a poor clinical trial result can wipe billions off the stock market, or perhaps, as we've seen with the paradigm shift in Wegovy and Ozempic, it creates whole new innovations in treatment. Can you tell us about, say, Iran at the moment, outside of the oil prices and the bombings and the politics? How is healthcare? What are the long-term significant implications for healthcare?
Well, we haven't really focused on that yet, but I mean, obviously, when there's inflationary pressures like the price of energy, if it's going up, or the price of shipping more broadly, it's going to eventually feed through to everything, absolutely everything. So the obvious one at the moment is fertilisers, food, but it's only a question of time before, well, apart from the shipping costs coming up, and obviously drugs are shipped all over the world, some of the elements, or some of the inputs to drug making, pharmaceutical making, will feed through. So it's really only a question of time.